Chapter 6. By 1820, something unprecedented has happened in European finance, something that wouldn't happen again until the age of central banks. If you're a king and you need to fund a war, you don't have a choice anymore. You go to the Rothschilds. If you're a government drowning in debt after years of conflict, if you need to refinance obligations or issue new bonds, if you want anyone to actually buy those bonds, you go to the Rothschilds. If you need to move massive amounts of money across borders, exchange currencies, or transfer gold, you go to the Rothschilds. They're not just bankers anymore. They're the infrastructure of European finance, the plumbing, the foundation. Remove them, and the entire system collapses. Here's why they're untouchable. First, they have speed. While competitors wait days or weeks for news about markets, wars, or government decisions, the Rothschilds already know. Their private communication network, carrier pigeons, relay riders, coded messages, trusted couriers, moves information faster than anything else in existence except maybe light itself. Second, they have reach. 5 brothers in 5 capitals means they can move money and coordinate investments across borders in ways their competitors can't match. When French bonds are crashing in Paris, the Rothschilds are buying them in London. When Austrian currency is strong in Vienna, they're converting profits before anyone else realizes the opportunity. Third, and most importantly, they have trust. When a Rothschild bank issues a bond or makes a loan, investors believe it's sound. The family's reputation for honoring obligations, even in the middle of wars and revolutions, makes their name worth more than gold. By 1825, the 5 Rothschild banking houses control an estimated 50% of all international capital flows in Europe. Half of everything. Think about what that means. Every major government loan, every currency exchange, every international trade deal, the Rothschilds are involved somehow, sometimes publicly, often invisibly. But there's a problem brewing, a problem that will threaten everything Mayer Rothschild built. On July 28, 1836, Nathan Rothschild collapses at his home in London. He's 58 years old, not old by Rothschild standards. His mother is still alive, would live past 90. Nathan should have decades left. He doesn't. The official cause of death is recorded as an infection, possibly from a carbuncle that became septic. But the truth is simpler and more brutal. Nathan Rothschild, the man who financed Wellington, the richest person on earth, the builder of empires, dies in agony from something that would be curable a century later with antibiotics. The London Times scrambles to write an obituary worthy of the moment. The death of Mr. Nathan Mayer Rothschild is one of the most important events for the city and perhaps for Europe, which has occurred for a very long time. His financial transactions pervaded the whole of the continent. No operations comparable to his have existed in Europe in all respects since the time of the Medici. Without Nathan, will the empire survive? The answer comes from an unexpected source. Paris. James Rothschild, the youngest brother, the one everyone initially underestimated because he was arrogant and young and didn't have Nathan's natural genius for numbers, steps forward. James is different from Nathan. Where Nathan was aggressive and confrontational, James is subtle and political. Where Nathan dominated through force of will, James seduces through charm and connection. But most importantly, James sees something his older brothers missed. The future isn't in government bonds and war financing. Not anymore. The future is in something that's literally transforming the landscape of Europe, mile by mile, year by year. Railroads. Chapter 7. Picture Europe in 1840. Cities are exploding in size. London, Paris, Vienna. They're doubling in population every few decades. Factories are multiplying. Coal mines are booming. Steel production is skyrocketing. But there's a fundamental problem strangling economic growth. You can't move goods fast enough. Horses and wagons are too slow, too limited. Rivers only flow in certain directions. Roads turn to mud in winter and dust in summer. The Industrial Revolution is creating enormous wealth, but it's trapped, bottlenecked, waiting for a solution. Then comes the railroad. The first commercial railway opens in England in 1825, the Stockton and Darlington line. It's a novelty at first, a curiosity. Within a decade, it's obvious that railways aren't a novelty. They're a revolution. Suddenly you can move tons of coal, iron, and manufactured goods hundreds of miles in hours instead of days. Cities that were isolated are now connected. Markets that were local become national, then international. James Rothschild sees what's coming before almost anyone else. Railways aren't just transportation, they're the future of everything. And somebody has to finance them. Building a railroad requires enormous upfront capital. You need to buy land, lay track, build stations, purchase locomotives, all before you earn a single penny in revenue. Most investors are terrified of this. Too risky, too expensive, too new. James sees opportunity. Throughout the 1840s, the Rothschild banking houses pour money into railway ventures across Europe. They finance tracks in France, Austria, Italy. They underwrite bonds for railway companies, then trade those bonds on secondary markets. But here's the genius part. James doesn't just lend money. He creates syndicates, groups of investors who share the risk. The Rothschilds put up some of their own capital, but use mostly other people's money to finance these massive projects. If a railway succeeds, the Rothschilds profit from commissions on the bonds, trading profits, and their stake in the company. If it fails, they lose far less than they would have if they'd funded it alone. It's brilliant, it's profitable, and it makes the family even more powerful than they were before. By 1848, the Rothschilds are no longer just bankers. They're industrialists, infrastructure builders, architects of the modern world. But while they're getting richer, something ugly is growing in the streets beneath their counting houses. Resentment. Chapter 8. February 1848. Paris. The streets are burning. Mobs surge through the city, overturning carriages, smashing windows, building barricades out of cobblestones and furniture. They're not just angry, they're starving. While families like the Rothschilds have been accumulating unprecedented wealth, average workers are barely surviving. Bread prices are astronomical. Housing is a nightmare. Factory wages barely cover rent. And everyone knows exactly who the government owes money to. The revolution spreads like wildfire. Within days, King Louis Philippe abdicates and flees the country. A provisional government takes over. And one of their first targets? The Rothschild Bank. James Rothschild, watching from his window as crowds gather outside, understands immediately. His life's work is about to be destroyed. The Paris Bank, one of the crown jewels of the Rothschild Empire, teeters on the brink of collapse. Withdrawals accelerate. Investors panic. Credit freezes. James does something desperate. He calls his nephew in London. Lionel Rothschild, Nathan's eldest son, receives the message and faces an impossible choice. He can save his uncle's bank, but it will cost a fortune. Millions in loans just to stabilize operations. And if the French Revolution spreads, those loans could evaporate. On the other hand, if he refuses to help, the Paris branch collapses. The entire Rothschild empire could fracture. Lionel sits in his London office staring at the request, remembering his grandfather's dying words. Unity is our only weapon. He approves the loan. The London Rothschild Bank arranges massive credit lines to the Paris branch. Enough to survive the panic. Enough to prove to investors and depositors that the House of Rothschild stands behind its obligations. The gamble works. The Paris Bank survives. The revolution eventually burns itself out. And the Rothschild Empire, tested by fire, emerges intact. But Lionel Rothschild isn't finished. He's about to do something even more revolutionary than saving his uncle's bank. He's going to prove that the Rothschilds are still the only financial institution on Earth capable of moving mountains overnight. The year is 1875. British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli receives urgent intelligence. The Khedive of Egypt is drowning in debt and needs to sell his shares in the Suez Canal. This matters enormously. France already owns significant shares. If another power, say France's rival or an unfriendly nation, buys Egypt's stake, Britain loses access to its fastest route to India and its Eastern Empire. Disraeli needs £4 million, immediately, not in weeks, not even in days. Now, Disraeli goes directly to Lionel Rothschild. According to legend, the meeting lasts minutes. Disraeli explains the situation. Lionel listens. Then, without consulting anyone, Lionel says, "You shall have it." Overnight, literally overnight, Lionel Rothschild arranges an unsecured loan of £4 million to the British government. The next day, Britain purchases controlling interest in the Suez Canal, one of the most important geopolitical acquisitions of the Victorian era, secured because a single banker could move £4 million faster than any government could. The Rothschilds don't just have money. They have something more valuable: the ability to deploy that money instantly, anywhere, for any purpose. Facing rising competition from American banks and changing markets, the Rothschilds prove they're still indispensable. But not every arrow in the quiver survives. He's going to break a barrier that has stood for centuries. In 1847, Lionel de Rothschild runs for Parliament as a Liberal candidate for the City of London. He wins. First Jewish man elected to the House of Commons. Problem: to be sworn in, he has to take an oath on the true faith of a Christian. Lionel refuses. He'll swear on the Old Testament or nothing at all. For 11 years, Lionel is elected and re-elected but cannot take his seat. Finally, in 1858, the law changes. Lionel becomes first practicing Jewish member of British Parliament. While Lionel breaks barriers in London, one of the 5 arrows is breaking. Remember Karl Mayer von Rothschild? The quiet one, the methodical brother who established the Naples branch? His banking house has been operating in the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies for decades, financing the Bourbon monarchy, building relationships with Italian nobility. Then, in 1861, everything collapses. Italy is unifying. Giuseppe Garibaldi's forces sweep through southern Italy, overthrowing the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies. The Bourbon king, the Rothschilds' longtime client, is deposed, fleeing into exile. The Naples Rothschild branch faces a choice: support the deposed king and risk everything on a losing cause, or abandon him and try to work with the new Italian government. The other Rothschild banks, particularly London and Paris, make a cold calculation. They won't throw good money after bad. They won't prop up a dying monarchy. In 1861, the Naples branch closes. It's the first time one of the 5 arrows breaks. The first sign that even the Rothschild empire has limits. When the political regimes you've backed for decades get overthrown, when revolutions sweep away the old order, even the most powerful banking dynasty can't stop the tide of history. 4 arrows remain, but the fractures are starting to show. And across the Atlantic, something dangerous is stirring. A new empire rising, bigger and more powerful than anything Europe has ever seen. Chapter 9. His name is Junius Spencer Morgan. If you've heard of J.P. Morgan, the American banker who would become synonymous with Wall Street power, Junius is his father, the man who started it all. In 1864, Junius takes control of a merchant banking firm in London called George Peabody and Company. He's everything the Rothschilds aren't: American, Protestant, and hungry to prove himself in a world dominated by European old money. Junius is methodical, conservative in appearance but aggressive in calculation. He studies the Rothschilds the way a general studies an opposing army, looking for weaknesses, identifying opportunities. And in 1870 he finds one. France declares war on Prussia. It's a catastrophic miscalculation by Emperor Napoleon III, nephew of the original Napoleon. France thinks it can crush the Germans quickly, teach Bismarck a lesson, and reassert dominance over Central Europe. Instead, Prussia, led by the brilliant and ruthless Otto von Bismarck, destroys the French army in a matter of months. Every major banking house in Europe, including the Rothschilds, watches the war and reaches the same conclusion. France is going to lose. Lending money to the French government would be throwing it away. Junius Morgan sees it differently. He doesn't care if France wins the war. He cares about one thing: can France repay the loans? And France, despite its military disasters, has something crucial. Its economy is diversified: agriculture, manufacturing, trade. More importantly, it has one of the most efficient tax collection systems in Europe. Even if France loses the war, even if they have to pay massive reparations to Germany, the French government will survive. And governments that survive pay their debts. Through a syndicate of investors, Junius Morgan raises over £10 million for the French war effort, roughly $1.5 billion in today's money. France loses the war. Badly. They're humiliated, occupied, and forced to pay 5 billion francs in reparations to the new German Empire. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. France doesn't default on Morgan's loans. Instead, they prepay them in 1873. Junius Morgan walks away with £1.5 million in profit, a windfall that catapults his firm into the top tier of global finance. For the first time in nearly a century, the Rothschilds face serious competition. And the House of Morgan is just getting started. While Morgan rises in London, his son, John Pierpont Morgan, known as JP, is building an empire in New York. By 1880, Wall Street is becoming a rival to the City of London as the center of global finance. The Rothschilds, who dominated European finance for generations, suddenly find themselves playing catch-up. They need to expand to America. They need new partnerships. They need to adapt or risk becoming irrelevant. And in 1893, they get their chance, when America itself almost collapses.